Hello. Hey. Hey guys. Welcome. Welcome to the stream. I don't know how to talk all of a sudden. That's okay. We don't need to worry about that because we're here to look at commander decks. So hang on while I adjust a few things on my end. So how you guys been doing? Good to see you. Glad we got to do a second stream this week. Feeling good about myself. Anything to talk about? I don't know. I think we're pretty good. Let me mess with my little man for a second. You need to sit down, sir. You're getting a little too rambunctious. Just enjoy your seat, enjoy your time there. Let's see. No, I mean it's only been like what, a day and a half, 2 days roughly since last stream. So yeah, we're gonna be talking about my next deck. In case you didn't know, this was a Magic deck. This is a Commander deck tech video stream. Well, it's a stream, so that's why it's not like super high edited or, you know, very straight to the point. Man, ever since I started doing this, I've been watching videos and I'm like, how do people make 5-minute videos of their deck techs? Like seriously, I'm sitting here like all hoarse and dehydrated, and like I can barely talk about 100 cards, and I'm dying over here while other people are just like, oh yeah, here's like 5 different decks, all in the span of 10 minutes. 10-minute deck techs. Like what? Excuse me? I could barely do it in an hour, let alone 2. Man. But anyways, I'll give you a quick rundown on some of the accessories I'm running. So obviously, like last time, I'm running a Game Genic box. I'm also shaking the table like crazy. So this is my preferred deck box. There's a lot of new ones. Like I think I talked about it last time, but the Professor. Well, Game Genic released the Professor's design as a mass market thing. So in case you didn't get the Kickstarter of his what is it called, Academy? The Professor's Academy deck box made by Game Genic. Now they're in mass production, so now you can kind of get them anywhere you can buy Game Genic supplies, which is awesome. Man, I remember when it was like difficult to find Game Genic boxes, man. Like, I'm so happy that they're like common, that they're just common now. You can walk into an LGS and chances are you can find something that Game Genic made. Versus like what, like even 5 years ago. 5 years ago, I don't even know if the company's 5 years old, to be brutally honest with you. But not too long ago, these were actually quite hard to find. It was quite difficult to find like a Game Genic thing in an LGS. So I'm very happy that they're popping off. You know, all the best luck to them. Anywho, yeah, here's the Game Genic. I forgot what the name of the tower is. And here's my dice that I use for counters and stuff like that. It's a Kraken. It's a Kraken playset. So it's just a standard playset like you would normally get. These are mostly like meant to be like D&D dice. Come on, buddy. Check out the cool dice. Or look at the token at least. Look at my treasure hoard. Ooh. Ooh, shiny. Yeah. Little ASMR for you guys. But yeah, there you go. That's just a full playset from Game Genic. I use them as counters for my deck. If I can, I will normally buy Game Genic. There's a couple of occasions where I don't get Game Genic. Like if you buy a bundle, you'll get a spin down. I like spin downs because they're a little easier to keep track of counters with and life, obviously. But you don't always. Oh yeah, I gotta pull the deck out. That's right. So you can live over here. And then here is the Ultra Guard, I believe. Yeah, there's the Ultra Guard. I believe these are boulders. We talked about these last time. Really enough, as you can see, this is like a smooth finish. This is not how I originally bought the box. That's how old this box is. This box is so old that the original finish started to peel off. You can kind of see it like over here, and just kind of, you know, finish the job. And it actually looks pretty good. I don't know if Game Genic or if Ultra Guard sells boulders that are just clear plastic like this, but it's something they should definitely consider. It looks good. Oh, there's a little sneak peek of the custom sleeves I got from Dragon Shield. Very happy with those. That was part of my birthday gift. I'll give you a little rundown in a second of what the deck is trying to do, and you know, some of the backstory. So let that just live there for a second, and then I will put this stuff away for now. I will be needing that later. Anyways, today we're talking about the Getrog, and I'll show you the sleeves right now. Or yeah, I'll show you. Actually, I don't know if you noticed, but I actually managed to, I think, get rid of reflections. Now, now instead of getting flashbanged by my face, now it's like I'm a mysterious silhouette. I can be on those what is it, witness protection things now. You can still kind of see me. Again, I was talking about this in last stream where I would occasionally get flashbanged by my own reflection, and I'd be very upset because it's not a very flattering angle to like have your reflection look from underneath you. It makes you look really bad. It distorts you because of the perspective a little. But at least now, like, I think the lighting's a little bit better. Or at least it's easier on my end, because now it's not light directly on my face where you will occasionally just get flashbanged by me. But anyways, here is the commander, the Getrog monster. And before we get going, I love these sleeves. Frogulon got sick. Could somebody call somebody? If you don't know what this is this is such a stupid sleeve. This was a random image that Zach Hadel created this and posted to his Twitter. That's the thing. That's a little bit of context. I got this off of his Twitter because he just randomly posted this whiteboard drawing, and I thought it was so funny, and it was like the perfect thing. Like literally, the entire deck is based on this image alone. So thank you, Mr. Hadel. This was a beautiful concept, a beautiful idea based off your dumb drawing. So that's funny. I love that. I love that so much. I love when like artists just randomly, or animators, you know, honestly, it's a lot of animators that just make these really weird stuff and just post it. So that's cool. He didn't sign it, unfortunately. I wish if I ever get to meet him, I would like him to sign the card, or at least sign the sleeve. So we'll see if that ever happens. But anyways, here's the Getrog monster. This is, I'm gonna open up with the floor with a bit of a disclaimer. This deck is not good. Well, I think it's good. The strategy works, but it's a very jank, because this is one of the secret commander kind of decks. And if you haven't noticed, I don't like playing a lot of tutors, so it's very tough to get the secret commander out. So the deck kind of is trying to balance two different strategies that thankfully are synergistic with each other, but it created something very jank. I think the deck is very jank, but there are plenty of strong cards in there to support the strategy. But in case you're wondering, the secret commander is actually Baba Saga, because I really like the strategy of what Baba Saga is trying to do out there in the world, out there in the real world. If we can actually get the seer. Yeah, there you go. It's this was from the Baldur's Gate set, I believe, and a very cool commander. I'll talk about the cards in a little bit. So see if we can get a little, yep, there we go. So a little bit of backstory of the deck, why it exists. Well, you know why it exists. It exists because of this image. That's the only reason why this deck exists. Also, another reason is because the commander looks really cool. I really love this art style. It was done by a oh gosh, what's her name? Justine L. Pasky. Janine L. Pasky, that's what it is. I believe she's a storybook illustrator, something along those lines. She creates illustrations, and she has a really very comforting art style that I enjoy a lot. And I didn't know about her until the Secret Lair, so I'm very glad that the Secret Lair actually introduced me to an artist I ended up really liking a lot. And I would like to get more of their work whenever possible. But yeah, what else? The backstory of the deck. This deck was something that had been living in Architect for a while. Nothing that I ever really committed to. It was kind of like just a back burner deck that, you know, I wasn't even like super jazzed about the deck. But I was lucky enough that my brother, you know, for my birthday, he was like, hey, you know, why don't I just buy you a deck, one of your decks that you don't have, that you like? And I was looking through my Architect, and like out of all the decks that I had just like laying around, this was the one that I was like, you know what, I want to do this, because not only did this come out, you know, this piece of art, this masterpiece was also like thrown out in the internet, and I'm like, you know what, I want this deck. So he was nice enough to get the building blocks of this deck put together. So he gave me 100 cards, and he ended up giving me a lot of really nice art stuff, like a lot of really good cards, and I was very grateful for that. But since then I made small upgrades here and there, and oh man, I'm feeling sick. Give me a second. Ugh. I don't know, all of a sudden my stomach started to turn. That's very strange. Hopefully I don't throw up on camera. If I do, I'll remember to clip it. Yeah, I mean, if I'm gonna throw up on camera, I might as well get clout out of it. But yeah, this deck was a birthday present for me, and I'm very happy. I'm very grateful for it. It's a deck that works in theory. I played it a couple of times. It really hasn't won. I don't think it's won a game yet. Let me think for a second. I think out of 10 games, this deck probably won like 3. If I'm gonna be honest with you, like it won like 3, maybe 4 games by itself. And it's because while these two cards have similar strategies, their decks, the cards they want, are, you know, just aren't compatible with each other. And I'll go into a little more into detail as we look through the rest of the deck. But I'll get started with the Get Rock Monster. If you don't know what he does, I'll show the card, and then I'll try to read it. So there you go. There he is. There's the man himself, the little man. He's a 5 cost Golgari, Death Touch, Frog Horror. At the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice the Get Rock Monster unless you sacrifice a land. That's not a problem in this deck. You may play an additional land on each of your end at the end of your turn. Oh my goodness. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm butchering this. It's because I'm trying to read it off the webcam, off the preview. You may play an additional land on each of your turns. Whenever one or more land cards are put into your graveyard from anywhere, draw a card. So if you're not aware, the Get Rock Monster is a very old commander and a very strong one. He's like one of the OG combo decks, and I run into a lot of issues because of his notoriety. I tend to not survive very long in games because people have an assumption of what Get Rock is trying to do, and they're not wrong. You know, of course I'm trying to win, and there are like some of those combo pieces, but I actually made an effort not to put in all the combos. Like, I don't want this deck to just be like on training wheels the entire time. I want this deck to do something, which is why I introduced a secret commander who is Babala Saga, the Night Witch. Honestly would be a much better commander for the deck, but I'm choosing to play it in a different way. So yeah, there you go, Babala Saga. And then let me see if I can actually read the text. Okay, so we tap it, sacrifice up to 3 permanents. If there were 3 or more card types among the sacrifice permanents, each opponent loses 3 life and you gain 3 life, and you draw 3 cards. So wombo combo, this is quite the engine. If I've only been out of like all the games I played with this, I've only gotten her out like 3 times, like 2 times I think, like 2 or 3 times I've gotten this card out, and it's actually like supercharged the deck. It's amazing when you actually get your secret commander out, all of a sudden your deck starts to pop off. So yeah, I thought it was cool, but you know, honestly, the deck works fine with Get Rock at the helm. It works better with Babala Saga, but it works just as fine. I built this deck with the idea of primarily sacrificing lands with multiple types, and then sprinkled in a lot of landfall, land matters cards. So it's pretty much an atypical type of, it's what you expect from a Golgari deck. There really isn't anything in here that is super unique. I've chosen to put in some like jankier cards to make the deck a little more interesting to play, and I think I've been pretty successful with it. So I will just show you guys as soon as I grab the correct cards. Yeah. So first segment we're gonna be looking at the draw cards. So as you see, we have like, I believe 6 6 cards. That's because both of my commanders have draw power in them. So I've I've omitted more draw cards. Plus I have some really strong draw engines in this. So we start with Skull Clamp. Skull Clamp is a artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +1 plus -1. Whenever equipped creature dies, draw 2 cards, equip 1. This is great because you're making a lot of dryads in this. You're equipping them to the cards. You're not only drawing a card off of this, you're drawing a card off of this. So the synergy is there. It's just, it can be kind of tough because you don't have a ton of token makers in this deck. You have a good chunk, but it never feels like you have enough, if I'm going to be honest with you. Here's a strange one. Growing Rights of Iklamok. Why would this be in the draw section? Well, that's another thing. Another confession I have to make with this deck. I have a lot of cards kind of like overlapping. Sometimes they overlap a little too heavily. Sometimes they don't overlap enough. And this is one of those strategies. This is one of those cards where the overlap is a little questionable. But let me read it and explain why. So when this enters the battlefield, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest of the bottom of your library in any order. So this is like a very bad search. A very bad tutor. If you were playing like standard, this would be amazing, but in commander, this is like a very meh ability. What you mostly want to do is you want to use its other ability, which is at the beginning of your end step, if you control 4 or more creatures, transform this. And then what this transforms into is something like basically your ramp spell. Like it becomes like super ramp. You get Iklamok, Crater of the Sun, which is this is basically like, what is it? Gaia's Cradle on the backside. Add 1 green mana, you tap it, add 1 green, or you can tap it, add green to your mana pool for each creature you control. So if you manage to flood the board with enough dryads or with enough Scoot Swarms, this becomes like a very big bomb, a very massive, near infinite mana source. So I like having this in the deck. It's not the greatest draw spell, but it lets you draw, so I was able to sneak it into the draw engine. And then Green Sun Zenith. This, usually when you see Green Sun Zenith, there's usually a dryad of the, there's usually another card in here that combos with this. So the Green Sun Zenith is X green. Search your library for a green creature card with converted mana cost X or less. Put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. Shuffle this card into the owner's library. So this is cool because you pay 0. You get to basically look for a 0 cost creature, which there's only 1 in the deck. So usually this is just a tutor for that 1 card. And then it shuffles itself back into the graveyard, or back into the deck. So it always comes back. It's never a dead card. Very similar is Gaia's Blessing, I believe. Gaia's Blessing. This is sort of like a budget card. This is one of those budget cards that you wouldn't normally see in a deck like this. But come on. Look at the card, please. God, I'm fighting with my camera again. That's fine. There it is. And then I'll go ahead and read it for you. So target player shuffles up to 3 target cards from their graveyard into their library, and then you draw a card. Pretty good. You're recycling 3 cards back into your library. You're drawing a card, so it's replacing itself. However, one of the nicer things to do is when Gaia's Blessing is put into your graveyard from your library, shuffle your graveyard into your library. So because of the type of deck you're playing here, you're sacrificing a lot of stuff. You know, your graveyard's going to be pretty full. And it's really nice to have like a failsafe in case that graveyard gets too big and you start to get close to milling yourself. It's nice to have a reset button. Here's another. The next 2 cards are basically the draw engine of this entire deck, along with the commanders. So this is Braid's Artisan Nightmare. This is just, this is a nasty card. If you don't know what it does, I'll go ahead and read it. At the beginning of your end step, you may sacrifice an artifact, creature, enchantment, land, or planeswalker. If you do, each opponent may sacrifice a permanent that shares a card type with it. For each opponent who doesn't, that player loses 2 life, and you draw a card. So this is really nice when you have Bobula Saga out. Well, this is just nice in a Bobula Saga deck, because what you're doing is you're sacrificing creatures with like 2 or 3 types. So you're forcing your opponent to get rid of pretty important stuff like they'll either get rid of an artifact, they'll get rid of a creature, they'll get rid of an enchantment, and a lot of times they'll do it, but most of the time you'll get to draw a card and they'll lose some life. So this is a pretty good card. There's a reason why a lot of people play this, so I like it a lot. Speaking of which, here is Black Market Connections. This is probably one of my favorite draw spells. Honestly, this is one of my favorite cards in the game. This is such a good card. It's a very well-designed card in the sense that you don't see the downside until you play it. Once you start playing this card, you start to feel the downsides of it. So it feels good. It feels very much like a Phyrexian Arena, but just like a modern version of it. And what does it do? So at the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, choose one or more. And then there are 3 different modes you can choose from. You can either create a treasure token, lose 1 life, draw a card, lose 2 life, or create a 3/2 colorless shapeshifter creature token with changeling, you lose 3 life. So all pretty relevant in this deck. No reason, like a lot of times you want to take all 3 modes, and a lot of times you could, because you know, with Baba Saga you can gain some life, so you know, choosing all 3 modes is never a terrible option. However, a lot of times you'll end up just drawing cards off of it, or you'll end up just making a treasure off of it. Never a bad thing. Like, this card is never dead, but it can very easily bite you in the butt. So I'm always kind of careful with it. I try to be careful with it, but it's really nice to use. So what's our next thing? Our next thing is our protection spells. So our protection spells, they're kind of pretty low. I'm not very good at protecting my commander. I'm just not in the greatest colors to do so. But I have some pretty strong cards in here. So like I have Swiftfoot Boots. I think if you've seen one of these deck techs, you probably know what this card does. It gives your equipped creature hexproof and haste. Here's Lightning Greaves. Lightning Greaves is essentially the same thing, but it gives it haste and shroud instead of haste and hexproof. Equipment 0, really important. Heroic Intervention, here's one you haven't seen yet. So for 2 mana, permanents you control gain hexproof and indestructible until the end of turn. This is just kind of like just a blanket, just like a blanket thing, like, hey, don't touch my stuff. You know, I won't let you. There are ways around this card, but overall, I feel like this is just a generally good card to protect yourself if you're in green. And then here's a little bit of like flavor. You know, here's a card that's just like a little bit of spice. It is Arachnogenesis. It's a 3 mana spell, so it's really hard to keep it. Well, when you're in a landfall deck, it's not hard to keep 3 mana up. However, this is a really nice thing because you want to create things that you can, you know, you want to create bodies, right? Like that's kind of like the end of the day. You want to create bodies because these are mostly engines. So you want to create an army to swing in with. And what does this do? So it's an instance, create X/1/2 green spider creature tokens with reach, where X is the number of creatures attacking you, prevent all combat damage that would be dealt to you this turn by non-spider creatures. So, this is a really nice little, you know, flavor thing. Obviously, there are ways to get around this. Like, if you're running a changeling deck, you're fucked. You need to play this because your opponent has spiders. If you're playing against a spider deck, obviously you're gonna lose. You're gonna lose that fight if you're playing a spider deck. And then obviously if your opponent is doing indirect damage to you, this is not going to do anything for you. You know, this is purely combat tricks, create bodies, prevent the damage. It's a really good fog. It's a really good offensive fog. I like these types of cards and I'm very excited to see more of them. I'm glad they reprinted this because this card was expensive for no reason, so it's good to see it. And then Angel Suffering. Here is another kind of like spice, but not really spice. It's just a good card in general. I think it's a good card in general. From New Capenna, surprisingly enough, so pretty cool. So it has flying. If damage would be dealt to you, prevent that damage and mill twice that many cards. Pretty good because if you mill lands, the Get Rock monster triggers off of those lands that get milled. So yeah, you're preventing damage, you're drawing cards. When you play this, you run the risk of milling yourself out. So that's why we have things that shuffle cards back into our deck. So it's really nice to have. It's a really good way to prevent damage because it's all forms of damage. It's not just combat damage, it's indirect or direct damage. So it's nice to have. And then what's the next thing? We're looking at our board wipes, I believe. Yeah. Oh man. All of a sudden I started to feel sick. This sucks, man. Oh well, what can you do? So use sort of like just another generically strong card in the deck. It is Toxic Deluge. If you don't know what this does, man, you're missing out. Toxic Deluge is, as an additional cost to the spell, you pay X life. So it's a 3 mana ability, 3 mana sorcery spell that you're going to pay X life into. So you're going to pay something. So all creatures get -X until the end of turn. That is a price worth paying. You give up 10 life to this and you're basically wiping the board from everything. And it's also your creatures, so it's a fair, I think it's a fair board wipe, because it's not like, oh, only your opponent's creatures. It's like, no, everything is going to get negative counters. And this is a way around indestructible and stuff. I don't actually know if this, I don't think this gets around hexproof, but I could be wrong. But yeah, this is just a great board wipe. It kind of gets around some indestructible stuff, so that's why I run it. Massacre Girl. Here's a little bit of spice. Something I've been debating whether or not to cut from the deck. This is one of those cards where I never feel too good about playing. However, well, I don't feel good about having it in the deck. However, I think this card is overperformed from my expectations. So I really do like this. I love the art. You know, we'll get that out there right now. The art looks amazing. So I love the art. The card feels a little overcosted. However, once this card goes, it doesn't stop. This thing is like a train. So I really love Massacre Girl. Let me go ahead and read what it does. Oh man. So when this card enters the battlefield, each other creature gets a -1/-1 until the end of turn. Whenever a creature dies this turn, each creature other than Massacre Girl gets a -1/-1 until the end of turn. So this gets pretty bad. This is basically like a mini Toxic Deluge on legs. So if you can time it right, you'll probably be able to wipe the board with this very quickly. And then not only that, but you're gonna establish a body and wipe the board. So I like it. A lot of times your opponents just have -1 or 1/1s out there on the field. Your opponent will usually have tokens out, and it's nice that you can catch them off guard with the Massacre Girl. So that's why I haven't cut it. It feels bad having it in the deck. However, once you play it, you start to realize, oh, this is good. You know, it's picking up steam. So that's why I like Massacre Girl as a board wipe. And then here's Bane of Progress. This is sort of, you know, a mix. I think it's a board wipe. I see it as a board wipe. I think it's just a good creature in general. So Bane of Progress, 4, 5, 6, 6 mana. So when this enters the battlefield, destroy all artifacts and enchantments. Put a 1/1 counter on Bane of Progress for each permanent destroyed this way. So this is your board wipe for artifacts and enchantments. So as you can tell, my other two were just creatures. They only cared about creatures. Realistically, creatures are going to be your biggest issue. However, occasionally your opponent will have something like a Bolas Citadel that is just like making things worse. They'll also have things like what is it? Aetherflux Reservoir. That's a really nasty card that something like Bane of Progress will not only get rid of, but then also make itself bigger, become a bigger threat, because they got rid of the target, the main target. So I like Bane of Progress. This is like a little bit of a spice. This is not really spicy. This is not a super spicy card, but it's a good card to have in the deck. And it's good to treat it as a board wipe. So what we're dealing with next is target removal. Make sure I grab all the target removal. So here's another one. Terra Sunder. Terra Sunder is one of those cards that got really good. It got super good at the start when it was released, and then began to slowly lose favor as people started to realize that they don't want to pay 4 mana for their removal spells. Give this a second to focus back. Come on. Yeah, there you go. So Terra Sunder had a lot of steam at the start of its release, and then very quickly like petered out as people began to realize that having 4 mana 2 of it being Golgari was kind of difficult to deal with any permanent. However, I think for just 2 mana alone, being able to destroy, or I'll read the card. So exile target artifact or enchantment. If this spell was kicked, exile target non-land permanent instead. And the kicker is 1 generic and 1 black. And the cost is 1 generic, 1 green. So this is just a good card. I don't super understand why it's been losing favor. I think being able to exile anything is worth its mana. Especially when it's just 2 mana. For 2 mana, being able to destroy an artifact or an enchantment, that's just good. If you have the extra mana, which normally in a landfall deck you have the extra mana, you'll be able to exile any permanent. That's nice. So whatever problem is out there, you can deal with. What is this? Shadow Grade? Shadow... Oh my gosh. Why can't I read this? I can never read this card. I don't know what that word is. Shadow Grudge? Grandeur? Shadow Grand? Archfiend. It's a demon. We've actually seen this card already. This was in the Belloquart deck that I have. So when this enters the battlefield, each opponent sacrifices a creature with the greatest power among creatures they control. You gain life equal to the greatest power among creatures sacrificed this way. And then it has a madness cost of 3. You pay 8 life. So this is very good indirect destruction. It forces your opponent to sacrifice the creature, so you don't have to worry about hexproof or indestructible because your opponent can interact with their own cards most of the time. I really don't think there's a way around this. As long as it's destroying the biggest body on the field, you don't really care what it's destroying. So that's why I like having this. I think it's very good removal, especially if you can pay the madness cost for it. Nature's Claim, another good card. This one destroys target artifact and enchantment, and then you gain, then your opponent gains 4 life for doing it. So 1 green, good effect, instance, always like to see it. Manglehorn. Manglehorn is another one of those like a little more sus picks. Not really sus, just like you never really see a lot of people run it in Commander. It's a little overcosted, and its effect it's very similar to Massacre Girl, where it feels bad having it in the deck, but once you play it, it starts to really show its presence on the field. So what does this do? So when this enters the battlefield, you may destroy target artifact. For 3 mana, destroying 1 artifact is not really good rates, so I can understand why you don't want to play it. However, the second ability is what you're really wanting to do. So artifacts your opponent controls enter the battlefield tapped. That is very strong when Commander is very treasure based. So whenever your opponent makes a treasure, it comes in tap. This is a great way of balancing the game without changing the rules. Because once you put a Manglehorn out there, cards like Dockside Extortionist become a lot less scary. These crazy cards like the, what is it, Goldspan Dragon, become a lot less scary because now all of a sudden their treasures are coming in tapped and they can't play them until the next turn. So this is a really great way to govern your game without impacting the actual gameplay too much. So here's the next one, Kendra's Discovery, or no, Kendra's Transformation. It's a 2-mana enchantment. So this is at sorcery speed. So this is enchant creature. Whenever this enters the battlefield, draw a card, so it immediately replaces itself. And then enchanted creature loses all ability and is a green elf creature with base power and toughness of a 3/3. So really good removal because I believe this gets around indestructible. This replaces itself, so you draw a card off of this, and then your opponent's creature can't do anything about it. Like they become a 3/3 token. So really nice removal. Grim Hireling. Here's a little bit of another weird one. Another card that's kind of overstepping its category because it's not really amazing removal, but I like what it's doing. Everything it's doing is good. So Grim Hireling. Let me see if I can get it on the screen for you. And then Whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, draw or create 2 treasure tokens. Pretty good. You're making treasure tokens if you're dealing damage. That's the idea. You're always trying to hit your opponent, so your chances are you're going to be making treasures. And then the reason why it's in the removal is you pay 1 black, sacrifice X treasures, target creature gets -X until the end of turn. Activate only as a sorcery. So this is really nice. It's a way to target down your opponent's creatures that have indestructible. And obviously it gives you something to do with your treasures, because a lot of times you'll make treasures but you don't need treasures, so it's nice to have like an outlet for your treasures like this. Feed the Swarm, just good old generic removal. It is 2 mana. Destroy target creature or enchantment an opponent controls. You lose life equal to that permanent's mana value. It's also at sorcery speed, so you know that's the only downside, is that it's sorcery speed. Everything else about it is great. Deadly Rollick. We've seen plenty of this card. It's just amazing in removal if your commander is out. Broken Bond, 2 mana ability, 2 mana spell. Destroy target enchantment or artifact. You may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. So really great removal, plus it lets you ramp. So that's why I like running that in this deck. Beast Within. If you have a green deck, chances are you're going to want a Beast Within. It destroys target permanent, and then you create a 3/3 instead. Or they create a 3/3 in return. So always nice to have. Next, we're going to be talking about our ramp really quick. Oh boy. All right. We're getting through it. As you'll notice, I mean, obviously, in the landfall deck, you tend to have most of your deck as lands. So a lot of our reading is going to be left to our lands. So we're kind of just getting through like the little sampler, the little appetizers really quick. So our ramp spells is Utopia Sprawl. And this amazing, I believe this is Kellogg. Yeah, Kellogg. Kellogg makes a return. And my God, what an amazing looking card. If you haven't bought a Kellogg's card, I would highly recommend you do so. Kellogg makes some of the like peak art design. Honestly, some of like a peak artist. Seriously, in their prime right now, some of the best stuff they made is well, that's not nice to say, but Kellogg is an amazing artist who has some of my favorite work in Magic the Gathering. There you go. That's a little bit better of a way to phrase it. So Utopia Sprawl is a one green enchant forest. As this enters the battlefield, choose a color. So normally you'll be choosing black. Whenever Enchanted Forest is tapped for mana, its controller adds an additional 1 mana of the chosen color. So normally you're going to turn whatever your forest is into a what are they called? A dual land. So you'll be able to tap for 2 mana. Very nice. Sanctum Weaver. Here's where things get a little more sus. So obviously, because of Bala Saga, we're going to be running dual type creatures, and Sanctum Weaver is one of them. However, it's a really good ramp spell, so don't discount it. It's still a good spell, or a good creature. Add X mana of any one color, where X is the number of enchantments you control. So I don't know what my enchantment number is, but it's probably higher than I think it is, which is why I like running this. Normally, this will tap for at least 1. Because you have at least 1 creature, 1 enchantment on the field. So normally this will just tap, you know, it'll be 2 for 1. Good return. However, you may be able to tap this for 2 or 3 mana, which would be nice. Pitiless Plunderer. This is a more recent addition to the deck. This is one of those things where I had an extra one hanging around, so I was able to throw it into the deck and ended up working out really nice. So Pitiless Plunderer is whenever another creature you control dies, create a colorless treasure token, artifact, and then if you don't know what treasures do, you tap them, you sacrifice them, add 1 mana of any color. So really good. Really good, another treasure treasure thing that makes more treasures. Works great with the what is it? The something hireling. We were just looking at them. It was not that card. Yeah, Grim Hireling. Works great with Grim Hireling. Works great because it's making artifacts that you can sacrifice. So I like it. And then obviously treasures are always going to be good. Here is another great one. Oh man, I can't read that name. But I'll show you. It is Paradise Mantle. Paradise Mantle, my god. What a fucking cutie, man. Seriously, this is such a good looking card. I love this. And the foiling is actually not that bad. It kind of sucks because like a lot of times it's a really hard card to like see the it doesn't read well because a lot of times when it's sitting on the board, it's kind of just gray. It's mostly gray. You can barely see the pastel stuff in this, and sometimes the foiling can sometimes just work against the card. And in this situation, I think the foiling has worked against the card. However, I still love this card. It's still a good card. And it is artifact equipment. Equip creature has tap, add 1 mana of any color. Equipment is 1. And it's a 0 cost artifact. So just good ramp. A lot of times you'll throw this onto a creature. And when you have enough lands on the field, you can then sacrifice the creature and the artifact with it. And you'll get card draw out of it. So it's really nice. Lanyard Loam Speaker. Here's a card that I was actually surprised that didn't really go up in price. This is one of those cards where I thought a lot of people were going to be like I thought this was going to be an auto include. However, not a lot of people are running it. I don't see it a lot in the wild. And I like it a lot. It works pretty well in this deck. So what does it do? For 2 mana, you can tap this, add 1 mana of any color. Just good by default. However, it has an alternate mode where you can tap it. Target land you control becomes a 3/3 elemental creature with haste until the end of turn. It's still a land, activate only as a sorcery. So this works double time in this deck because normally if you don't need mana, you're going to tap this and turn one of your lands into a creature. Like maybe a basic forest, you turn into a creature, you sacrifice it to Bauble of Saga. That satisfies 2 of your conditions. You can also turn your artifact lands into creatures, which then satisfies all your conditions. So good card in this deck. Actually, just a good card in general, because it creates a 3/3 haste. You know, that's nothing to sneeze at. And here's the next one, Liquid Metal Torque. This was a sleeper card, man. Like a lot of people, when you realize what it does, it becomes like a lot stronger. So this is a 2 mana, add 1 generic. Not good in this deck because, you know, we have some cards with generic costs, but normally we want to be making colored mana. So not the greatest artifact, especially in a landfall deck. You really don't want to be prioritizing artifacts over normal ramp. However, its second ability is what keeps it in the deck. And its second ability is tap this, target non-land permanent becomes an artifact in addition to its other types until the end of turn. So this is a very fun card with the Bauble of Saga out. Not even with the Bauble of Saga out, because honestly, you throw this out, you tap this, you turn your opponent's creature into an artifact or their commander, honestly, and then you play a Bane of Progress and you'll wipe their field. So it's really nice. It's a very nice gotcha card, but a lot of people, people who play it know what it does. People who've never seen this card or played it will always get caught off guard, and I love that card for this. So it's a very fun little gotcha card. Next one is Dryad of the Elysium. This is sort of like an auto include in most decks. Well, maybe not most decks, but this is an auto include in this deck, because not only is it 2 types, but it also lets you play an additional land each turn, and it also color fixes you. So it turns lands you control have every basic land type in addition to their other types. So this turns all your basics, or it turns everything into like any basic. So your Field of the Dead becomes a basic forest, becomes an island. Whatever you need it to be, that's what they become. Pretty strong card. Love it. Works great in this deck. And then our next one is Burgeoning. It's another Kellogg's card. And awesome art as always with Kellogg's. So Burgeoning is a 1 green enchantment. Whenever an opponent plays a land, you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. Green will never have a problem ramping. However, this turns you into a nuisance, and I love it for that. You're always going to be ahead of your opponents land-wise. Azusa, Lost But Seeking. Awesome card. If we can ever take a look at it. Ooh, come on. There we go. There she is. Awesome card. You may play 2 additional lands on each of your turns. So, super ramp. If you have the lands to support it. Awaken the Woods. Now, here's the card that ended up blowing up in price. I think it's calmed down since release. However, this is still like just bust. This is still a good card. So don't sleep on it if you see it. Awaken the Woods is a 2 green X spell. And it is create X 1/1 green forest dryad land creature tokens. So this is something that if you have extra mana, which normally in a landfall deck you have a lot of extra mana, you can dump it all into this and never go down mana value, because this thing is creating creatures that are also lands. So this card is never dead. You can invest all your mana into it and not feel bad about playing it, because this basically refunds most of your mana. You're going to lose 2 green, but that's nothing in a green landfall deck. So great card, very strong. No reason not to play it. And then what's next? There we go. All right, so now we're in the main strategy of the deck. This is the whole reason. This is what makes the engine go. Not the greatest, but, well, I'll be honest, there are some cards in here that I'm thinking about replacing. This deck doesn't get a ton of upgrades. Well, actually, it's not a deck that I upgrade very often, mostly because it's a gift. It was a gift deck. It's a present deck, so I don't want to make a ton of upgrades to it. And plus, you know, building off of these two is kind of tough, because you don't know which way you want to lean. You want to lean towards permanence, you know, variant permanence, or do you want to lean to the landfall? And this deck, I think, has done a good job sitting somewhere in the middle without it being too janky. It's still jank. It's still pretty jank, but I think it's pretty stable. It's a stable jank deck, I would say. Ugh. Okay. So let's see what's in here. This is Wormcoil Engine. Great card. Artifact creature that has Death Touch, Lifelink, 6 mana. 6 mana is a lot. So whenever this dies, put a 3/3 colorless worm artifact creature token with Death Touch, and then put a 3/3 colorless worm artifact creature token with Lifelink. So this is awesome. This is a great card for defense. Plus, obviously, it's great to immediately feed to your Babalith Saga, because then you're splitting this card into two different artifact creatures, which just means for your future turns, you're basically set up for more sacrifice stuff. So very awesome card for this deck. Vigor is used to be a budget card. You can kind of tell how old this deck is based on Vigor being here, because this was a budget recommendation from the command quarters. Obviously now it's not a command quarters budget card anymore. However, I think it still works pretty well with the deck. It does for 6 mana. It has trample. If damage would be dealt to you, okay, if damage would be dealt to another creature you control, prevent that damage. Put a 1/1 counter on that creature for each 1 damage prevented this way. This is like a really good, like, this is like super indestructible. which is cool. I mean, it's only for damage base destruction, but nonetheless, if anything wants to swing at you, everything becomes like an amazing blocker because they all get buffed by vigor. And then the main reason why this card is in the deck is whenever this is put into the graveyard from anywhere, shuffle it into its owner's library. So this is the card that prevents you from getting milled out, which is what you want. You want cards that, especially when you have the that angel. What was the angel called? It was I will find it and I will let you know what it's called in a second. Angel of Suffering. There it was. Took a second. But because you're running Angel of Suffering, milling yourself out is a very, very real thing you can do. So having things like Vigor in there help you from immediately dying. So our next one is Titania, Protector of Argoth. Kind of old card, just good generic lands matter card. For 5 mana, it does, whenever this enters the battlefield, return target land from your graveyard to your hand, or from your graveyard to the battlefield. So this will immediately replace 1 mana. So instead of being a 5 mana thing, it's now a 4 mana thing. Whenever the land you control is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, put a 5/3 green elemental creature token onto the battlefield. So this is already amazing with these both cards, because normally you want to be sacrificing lands to this, and obviously this is already going to eat your lands. So this is just a massive synergy piece that's just going to make you bodies left and right. So very fun. Tireless Tracker. When this enters whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you investigate. Investigating creates a clue token, and a clue token is you can pay to sacrifice the artifact, draw a card. So good janky draw spell. However, its second ability is pretty good. Whenever you sacrifice a clue, put a 1/1 counter on Tireless Tracker. You want to be making clues and then sacrificing them to Bala Saga, so that all of a sudden you get like a 10/10 out of this. Very strong card. Mending a Dominaria. This is a card that I'm kind of like, I'm on the fence about, but it's performed. It's done good stuff. Not my favorite. So let's see what it does. So it's a saga, enchantment saga. Its first 2 sagas are put the top 2 cards of your library into your graveyard. Then you may return a creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Pretty good. 2 turns. That's, you know, it's not going to hurt you. And before, because I know a lot of times these sagas can be kind of hard to see. And then on its 3rd saga, before you sacrifice it, return all land cards from your graveyard to the battlefield, then shuffle your graveyard into your library. Really good way to save your stuff. And then the Staff of Titania. There we go. Staff of Titania. This is a card that I was so mad at. Because when I bought Staff of Titania, the price of it artificially got inflated, which was very upsetting because maybe a week after buying it, it like dropped back down to its normal price. And then of course I was out like an extra $2 or $3. So kind of sucked. So that's the memory I have with Titania, with Staff of Titania. But it's a good spell, so I was willing to pay the extra $1 or $2. So for 2 mana, you have an equipment artifact. Equipped creature gets a XX, where X is the number of forests you control. When we have a lot of ways to make forest creatures, this is going to make your stuff big. Whenever equipped creature deals combat damage, create a 1/1 green forest dryad land creature token. So this is another thing that's making, this is like its own mini engine essentially. So you're making forest, you're buffing the creature with it because of it. So good synergy piece for at least Getrog. Oh boy. here's a tough one. So hang on. Let me quickly pull this card up because I cannot read Phyrexian. So this is Shieldred. The Apocalypse. No. Shieldred the Apocalypse. Yep, there you go. I got it. There we go. There's Shieldred the Apocalypse. This is actually pulled from a pack. So I was very happy when we got this. It was an awesome card to pull, especially because like this started off at really expensive. This was racking up the dough. Obviously we didn't sell it because I have it, but it was cool to see that this went from like a $20 card to like 150, and then like kind of like, what is it at right now? That's a very good question. It is 70 bucks. So it's cool. Cool that we were able to just pull this and not pay anything and just see the dollar amount just increase by crazy amounts. So what does this do? Shieldred has Death Touch. Whenever you draw a card, you gain 2 life. Whenever an opponent draws a card, they lose 2 life. So great draw spell. Great way to like punish your opponent for playing the game. Obviously the Praetors are just like that. Praetors are designed to punish your opponent for playing the game. That's what I like about this one. So never mad to play it. Scoot Swarm. What? Let's come back here. There we go. Scoot Swarm, probably the poster child for landfall decks. If you play green and have a landfall deck, chances are you probably have this card. So for 3 mana, it has landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, create a 1/1 green insect creature token. Kinda meh. However, if you control 6 or more lands, create a token that's a copy of Scoot Swarm instead. So, oh mama. You play this on turn 6? No, you play this on like what, turn 7? Or when you have 7 mana, you play this, you drop your land, and then you make a copy of this, and then you're off to the races. Because each version of Scoot Swarm that you make is going to make another Scoot Swarm, and then those Scoot Swarms are going to make more Scoot Swarms, and then all of a sudden you have 100 Scoot Swarms on the field, and you can't keep track of all of them anymore. So I love this card. It's very funny to actually pop off with. Ramunap Excavator, I believe is what this is. Yeah, Ramunap Excavator. This is a 3 mana creature. You may play lands from your graveyard. Pretty good because we're going to be sacrificing a lot of lands. We're going to be milling a lot of lands. So being able to recover some of them is nice. Especially when you have like, oh, play an extra land. It's nice to be able to play an extra land from your graveyard. Obnexus the Fallen. This was kind of like a card that I was like a little hesitant to throw into the deck. However, I think it ended up working out much better than I anticipated. I was very low on this card, and then all of a sudden, like, I played it and I'm like, oh wow, this card's good. So 5 mana, it has landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may have target player lose 3 life. If you do, put 3 1/1 counters on this creature. So not only is your opponent losing a lot of life, but all of a sudden they have to deal with like a 12/12. It's pretty nice. It sucks that, you know, Obnexus can't fly, but you know, you're getting an amazing landfall card out of it. So that's not even an issue. Here are some of the cards where I'm thinking about cutting. I have some Nissas. The Nissas I think read better than they play, and I'll talk about it why. So Nissa, Basswood Seer. There we go. 3 mana creature. It can be your commander because it's legendary. Whenever this enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a basic forest card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. Kind of meh. Ramp. And then whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may, if you have 7 or more lands, exile this and then return it faced over. So flip it. And then when you flip it, it turns into a Planeswalker. Nissa Sage Animaths. Here's your Planeswalker. Pretty good Planeswalker for 3 mana. Not the end of the world. Comes in with 3 loyalty. I'll go ahead and read the... Let me see if I can get the thing to focus again. Low. Oh, come on. Focus. Can we not get a focus? Whatever. So, Nissa, there we go. Nissa, reveal the top cards of your library. If it's a land card, put it onto the battlefield. Otherwise, put it into your hand. Pretty good for a +1. -2. Put a legendary 4/4 green elemental creature token named Ashaya, the Awakened Woods, onto the battlefield. 2 loyalty to get a 4/4. That's okay. At least it could protect itself. You throw this on the field and then you create a 4/4. That's not bad. And then if you can manage to ultimate it, which is pretty tough, untap up to 6 target lands. They become 6/6 elemental creatures. They're still lands. So this is okay. If I can get this to ultimate, which I don't normally do, I can create like a 2 land type, because I'll have creatures, I'll have lands, or on the occasion I have an artifact land. I can have a 3 types where I have artifact, creature, land, and then I can sacrifice 1 thing for it. And then the next card. This is Nissa Ascended Animus. This is from, I believe, All Will Be One or New Phyrexia, something like that. Oh, hang on. What? Well, hello, I'm back. Anyways, so this Ascended Artemis is a pretty cool card. I like the when they did the Phyrexian Planeswalkers. I thought that was really cool. So we have 5 mana, 2 Phyrexian, and then what does it do? So completed. Completed is you can pay the Phyrexian or you can pay green. If you pay the Phyrexian tax, which the Phyrexian symbols mean you pay 2 life instead of paying the green. However, if you pay it, you lose loyalty counters. I believe 2 fewer. So yeah, so you're paying 2 life and then you're losing 2 loyalty counters. So normally it's better just to pay the mana. You don't really want to pay the Phyrexian mana, because then you're going to lose some of the value from this. So for 7 mana, create an XX green Phyrexian horror creature token where X is Nissa's Ascended loyalty. So when you throw this on the field for 7 mana, you can +1 and then make an 8/8 Phyrexian. That's pretty strong. Oh boy. Ugh. And then for -1, destroy target artifact or enchantment. Pretty standard. And then for the ultimate, -7. So if you pay 7 mana, you can immediately just minus this for everything. That's what makes this a really good Planeswalker. Until the end of turn, creatures you control gain 1/1 for each forest you control and gain trample. So this is a really fun Craterhoof Behemoth in the deck without it being Craterhoof Behemoth. It depends on at what point you play this card. Sometimes if you play it at 7 and you have Awaken the Woods and then you play this, like that's basically GG. You -7 and then you swing for game. So really fun ability. So our next card, Life from the Loam, is a 2 mana sorcery. Return up to 3 target lands from your graveyard to your hand, and then it has Dredge 3. Dredge is, instead of drawing a card, you may put exactly 3 cards from the top of your library into your graveyard. If you do, return this card from your graveyard to your hand, otherwise draw a card. So really good. So if you want, instead, you can basically just keep recycling this card from your graveyard. You mill lands, you draw cards from the Getrog. You get to play this more times. You can return lands from your graveyard, and then you're just off to the races. This is a very fun little engine to pull off. Kamal's Will. This is something I play. I like this card. It's done a lot of work for me, so I usually run it. And in this deck specifically. So it's an instance, choose one. If you control a commander, as you cast the spell, you may choose both. Normally, we'll be controlling our commander, so we'll be able to do both things. And until the end of turn, any number of target lands you control become 1/1 elemental creatures with vigilance, indestructible, and haste. They're still lands. Perfect. That's what Baba Wasaga likes to see. And then choose target creature you don't control. Each creature you control deals combat damage equal to its power to that creature. It's a removal spell. So for 4 mana, you get to make a token army, and then you get to destroy something for free. So always fun to have. I like this card a lot. Journey to Eternity. I think we've seen this one in the Space Godzilla deck. It's a flip card. So enchant creature, when it dies, return it to the battlefield, and then you get to flip this. Yep, I remember this card. Yeah, we did talk about this. This gives your creatures flying, I believe. Oh wait, no. Return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. That's pretty strong. And then you can tap this for any color that you want. Here's another card where I'm kind of on the fence about. I added it to the deck because I had a lot of like colorless tokens. However, it doesn't work too great. Forsaken Monument. For 5 mana, I don't think this is the right card for the deck. I thought it was going to be a nice little piece of tech. Didn't end up working out. So I might switch this out for something else. So for 5 mana, colorless creatures you control get a 2/2. There are some colorless creature tokens that I make, not a lot. And then whenever you tap a permanent for colorless mana, add an additional colorless mana. That's okay because I have a lot of like utility lands, so I have a lot of lands that don't tap for any colors, so that makes this pretty nice. Whenever you cast a colorless spell, you gain 2 life. So. Here's Dredge, or Dread. This is Dread. It is a, what is it, 6 mana? Wow. 6 mana creature that has Fear. I believe Fear is, this can't be blocked except by creatures that are either black or artifacts or colorless. I think something like that. I think it can only be blocked by by artifact creatures and black creatures. I could be wrong about that. Something along those lines. Fear is pretty good. Pseudo unblockable. Whenever a creature deals combat to you, destroy it. That is pretty nice. And then whenever this is put into your graveyard from anywhere, shuffle it into your owner's library. This is like the Vigor effect. So this was part of the budget version of Getrog Monster a couple of years ago. So it's nice that I was able to get these. Then here is the next card. Crucible of Worlds. Here's kind of like your poster child for Golgari Landfall. For 3 mana, you may play lands from your graveyard. This good value. No reason not to run it in a deck like this. All right. Next one is Creepy Renaissance. So for 5 mana, it's a sorcery spell. Choose a, well, let me just read it like this. Choose a permanent type. Return all cards from the chosen type from your graveyard to your hand, and then it has flashback 7. So flashback basically means that if it's in your graveyard, you can pay 7 and then play it again from your graveyard. And then I believe you exile it. Yeah. So that's cool. You get to choose basically what you want to choose is lands, and then you just get like a ton of lands from your graveyard back to your hand. Pretty good card. Conduit of Worlds, 4 mana ability, 4 mana artifact actually. You may play lands from your graveyard. That's the main reason why it's in here. And then choose target non-land permanent card in your graveyard. If you haven't cast a spell this turn, you may cast that card. If you do, you can't cast an additional spell this turn. Activate only as a sorcery. It's kind of like a okay card. Mostly it's just another play things from your graveyard card. Ooh, here's a fun card. Ugh. Blossoming Turtle. This is a really cool card. I love this card. For 4 mana, you get a 3/3. Whenever this enters the battlefield or attacks, mill 3 cards, then return a land card from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Slow ramp, but it's ramp. And then the nice thing about this card, what makes this really good in specifically Baba Saga, is activated abilities of lands you control cost 1 less to activate. And then land creatures you control get 1+1. Oh mama. That is really good. This all of a sudden this makes the Baba Saga deck a threat, I think. I think it makes it more of a threat because all of a sudden your land creatures are not only like cheaper to cast, but all of a sudden they start getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So you're getting a 1+1 just from having this guy out. It's really nice. 2 mana, Bloodgeist. Pretty good landfall creature. I like it a lot. Kind of expensive for what it did, but you know, it's a good, I'm glad I have it now. So 2 mana creature, the 2/1, not great stats, but what else? It can't block, so it can only attack. This has haste as long as you have 10 or less life. That's pretty late in the game. However, the thing that makes this great is that it has landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may return this from your graveyard to the battlefield. So this is a very sticky body. And actually I thought about putting this into Space Godzilla as well. However, it doesn't work super well with Space Godzilla. Like this will always come back and always be a target to mutate onto, but your mutate creatures obviously don't come back. So good card in this deck, not so much in other decks, I think. Now we're getting to some good stuff. Here's Bitter Blossom. This is one of the haymakers. 2 mana tribal enchantment fairy. And it says, at the beginning of your upkeep, you may lose 1 life and create a 1/1 black fairy rogue creature token with flying. It's really nice because you play this early enough, you start developing a bunch of bodies that can not only attack, but that you can then sacrifice to Baba Saga very easily. So super good card for this deck. And it doesn't require lands or anything. It just kind of sits there and makes free bodies for you. And then here's the last card for the main strategy. It is Ashaya, Soul of the Wild. Now this is a very fun deck. This is a very fun card in the deck. And it has this creature. This creature's power and toughness are each equal to the number of lands you control. Non-token creatures you control are forests in addition to their other types. So Ashaya, if you play it at the right time, can get very big, because obviously, you know, baseline you can expect 5 mana, and then depending on how many creatures you have on the field, this all of a sudden starts to get like bigger than 5 mana, bigger than 5/5. It becomes like 8/8. It can go as big as like maybe, I don't know, 15/15. This card can get out of hand very quickly. Non-token creatures. So that's where it gets kind of. That's probably the only downside, is that it's non-token creatures. If it could be token creatures, then holy cow, this would be scary. All right. Oh man. We're finally here, guys. We made it to the halfway point. Not really the halfway point, but we're getting to the lands now. Now we're in the lands. The land should be a little bit quicker for me. However, don't hold your breath. I'll try to skip through the cards that we've already talked about in the past, and I'll try to talk about new cards relatively quickly, because I want to thank you for like sticking around this long. I haven't been feeling too good throughout this stream, and I'm pretty sure it's very noticeable, but you know, I might be a little bit off, but thank you for hanging around. Thank you for sticking around if you're there. So This is Validated Sanctuary. This is the MDFC land we've talked about. This is Blinkmoth Nexus. This is one of those lands that turn into creatures and an artifact. This is an amazing target for Bawala Saga. It has, obviously you can tap it for generic, or you can pay one. This becomes a 1/1 artifact creature with flying until the end of turn. It's still land. And then if you pay one, tap it, target Blinkmoth creature gets 1/1 until the end of turn. So, not bad. So normally what you want to do is you just want to turn it into a creature, because this is a creature, land, artifact. So 3 types, easy to feed. Castle Lochlin. This is just, I believe it's a draw spell. So it enters the battlefield tapped unless you control a swamp. Normally we'll have swamps. Not super often, but we do have swamps in here. It taps for a black. You pay 3 mana, tap it, draw a card, then you lose life equal to the number of cards in your hand. If you're struggling to draw cards, which normally you're not, it's a good backup draw spell. Darkmoor Salvage, I believe. And this is the card that a lot of times cards with Dredge tend to combo with the Get Rock monster. So you want to be careful. I'm trying to be careful. I don't want too many combo cards in here. So what does this do? This enters the battlefield tap. Then you can tap it for 1 black. And then it has Dredge 2, which is nice because it means that you can feed it to the Get Rock, you can feed it to Bawala Saga, and then you can keep playing it from your graveyard and always have a target for one of your 2 creatures. So super nice. And then we have Dark Moss Bridge. This is an artifact land that has indestructible, and it can tap for 1 of 2 colors. It enters the battlefield tap, so that's the only downside. Dread Sanctuary. This is another one of those cards that's great for Bawala Saga. It taps for a generic, or you can pay 4 mana. This becomes a 4/2 golem artifact creature until the end of turn. It's still land. Satisfies all of our needs. Oh, Dryad Arbiter. I decided to put Dryad Arbiter in the land slot, even though it's a creature. It is a creature, so it really shouldn't be here, but realistically, it's a land. You'll tap it for a land. You'll sometimes sacrifice it. You'll mostly sacrifice it to Bawala Saga. So it's nice. Nice to have. Fable Passage, we've talked about. It's a searcher for basics, I believe. Yeah. Sacrifice this, search your library for a basic card, put it onto the battlefield tap, then shuffle. If you control 4 or more lands, untap that land. So really nice. Field of the Dead. Here's one of those cards that people just do not like. It's great for a deck like this that wants to eat bodies and eat lands. This is awesome. So it enters the battlefield tapped. The smallest downside of the world. It taps for colorless. So what? And then it has, whenever Field of the Dead or another land enters the battlefield under your control, if you control 7 or more lands with different names, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. So this, in a deck like this, oh man, as you can tell, we already have a bunch of different named lands, and it's very easy with the landfall deck to get the 7 lands. So Field of the Dead is a very powerful card in this deck. Very good token generator. Frostwalk Bastion is a snow land. Taps for a generic, and then I'll read the rest. So you can pay 1 generic, 1 snow land, or snow mana, or that's what this symbol is. So that's a snow symbol. Only snow lands can tap for it. So you pay 2, you pay 1 generic, 1 snow land, or 1 snow mana. Until the end of turn, this becomes a 2/3 construct artifact creature. It's still land. And then whenever this deals combat damage to a creature, tap that creature, and it doesn't untap during its controller's next untap phase. Not super relevant. What's mostly relevant is that it becomes all 3 land types, or all 3 types that we care about. Gaia Reach Centenarium, something like that. It is a land that lets you draw cards. So taps for generic, or you can pay 2, tap this. Each player draws a card, then discards a card. So you're getting the cycle. Not bad. Ink Moth Nexus. As you can tell, this is the tattoo series from the Secret Layers. Very happy to have this. This is just a generically just good card. We can get to look at it for like even like half a second. Come on, bless us with your amazing detail, please, please. Just there we go. You just have to hit the camera a little. But yeah, there's Inkmoth Nexus. It taps for a generic, and then you can pay 1. This becomes a 1/1 artifact creature with flying infect until the end of turn. It's still land. So wow. This is a great, like, it's not really a gotcha card anymore. Everybody knows what this card does. You can catch new players off guard with it. However, it doesn't take long until they start learning that this is something you want to get rid of. So because it has infect, it can be a threat, a very easy threat. However, most of the times it's just, you know, food for the Babala Saga. Malakari Rebirth, we've talked about this. It's a MDFC land that lets you, it protects a creature. Choose target creature, you lose 2 life. Until the end of turn, that creature gains. Whenever this creature dies, return it to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control. Pseudo Reanimate. Myrex. He's a relatively new card that was a bit of a sleeper at first, but ended up picking up some value. So taps for 1 generic, but it can also tap for 1 mana of any color. Activate only if this entered the battlefield this turn. So you play this and you get 1 color out of it. After that, it's colorless spells or colorless mana. And then what I like about this is that you can pay 3, tap this, create a 1/1 colorless Phyrexian Might artifact creature token with Toxic 1, and this creature can't be blocked. So really great way. It's like it's kind of like the discount version of Field of the Dead. So this is probably the more fair version of Field of the Dead actually. So I like it. Pretty good card in the deck. Mishra's Factory. Another good card that plays well with the Babala Saga. So taps for generic. You can pay 1. This becomes a 2/2 artifact creature until the end of turn. Still land. And then, or you can tap it. Target assembly worker creature gets a 1/1 until the end of turn. You don't normally do that. However, being able to pay 1 mana to turn this into a creature that you can then feed to Babala Saga is nice. And then here's Mishra's Foundry. For all intents and purposes, essentially the same card, just with a slightly different name and different mana price. So it taps for generic. You can pay 2 mana. This becomes a 2/2 artifact creature until the end of turn. It's still land. And then it has the pay 1, tap it. Target attacking assembly worker gets a 2/2 until end of turn. So really good card. Another great one to feed to the witch. Mutavault. Mutavault is another one. I don't believe it. This one I think just becomes a creature land. It doesn't become an artifact. So you tap it, colorless. You can pay 1. This becomes a 2/2 creature with all types until the end of turn. It's still land. So you get 2 of the 3 types. So it's okay. It's good in this deck, I think. Overgrown Tomb. So this is, I believe, what is it? A shock land? So when this enters the battlefield, you may pay 2 life. If you don't, it enters the battlefield tapped. Yeah. So this is your shock land, I believe. Reflecting Pool. Reflecting Pool is tap, add 1 mana of any type that a land you control could produce. So great color fixing. Strip Mine. Here's one of my old strip mines. Awesome card. Great card. So it taps for colorless mana, and then you could tap it, sacrifice it, destroy target land. A lot of times, I mean, your opponents are playing a lot of lands, a lot of really strong lands. So it's nice to be able to occasionally destroy one of your opponent's lands that is like getting a little too out of hand. Like this is great for like if your opponent has a Field of the Dead. So don't leave your house without at least 1 piece of land removal. You need an answer to something. And a lot of times it's strong lands that you need an answer for. So Takenuma, Abandoned Mire, we've talked about this. It has tap for black, or you can channel it, mill 3 cards, return target creature, return a creature or planeswalker card from your graveyard to your hand. and then it costs one less depending on your legendary count. Mythosin Garden taps for a generic. You can pay 1, tap this, add 1 mana of any color. I never do that. And then the next ability is an X ability. So you can tap this, pay X. This becomes a target of copy. This becomes a copy of target non-token artifact you control with mana value X. So this is actually pretty good for this deck specifically, because then a lot of times what you want to do is you want to target one of your opponent. You want to target your artifact creatures or your artifact. Is it creatures? Non-token artifact. So you can copy another artifact land. You can copy an artifact creature, and then all of a sudden this becomes a 3-type thing. So this becomes 3 types, and then you can sacrifice that to the Baba Saga. So pretty good in this deck. Tree of Tales, artifact land, taps for mana. Turn Timber, one of our NDFC lands that we've talked about in the last one, where I believe you look at the top 7, and then you get to play a creature with 7 mana or less for free. If it has power less than 3, I think you put 3/1/1, something like that. Something like that. It's an MDFC. It's a good MDFC, so I like playing it. Underground Mortuary. Here is our dual land that has a name type. Enters the battlefield tapped. When this enters the battlefield, surveil 1. So surveil is look at the top card of your library. You may put it into your graveyard. If the top card of your library is a land and the Getrog is out, all of a sudden you get to put that land into your graveyard, and then you get to draw a card. This is a great card. I love the surveil lands in this deck. Very good card. Undergrowth Stadium. I believe, yeah, this is the Battle Bond lands. So super happy to have a Battle Bond land in this deck. So this enters the battlefield tapped unless you have 2 or more opponents. It's commander, so you're going to have that, very likely. And then it taps for one of your 2 colors. Super nice. Volta Whispers. This is your artifact land for black. Verdant Catacombs. I believe this is a fetch. Yeah, it's a fetch. You pay 1 life, you tap it, pay 1 life, sacrifice this, search your library for a swamp or forest, and then put it into the battlefield, then shuffle your library. So this is awesome, because a lot of times you get to sacrifice this, you get to draw a card, and then you get to play a forest. So love this card. Whoops. Great card, don't leave home without it. War Room, we've talked about this in the past. Pay 3, tap it, pay life equal to the number of colors in your commander's color identity, draw a card. So pay 3, tap it, pay 2 life, and then you get to draw a card with this. Ooh, finally. We're at the end, guys, look. Now we're looking at the basics. And here's some of the snowlands that we need for some of the cards we have. So I love these pixel lands, they're great. Unfortunately, I only have 1 of each color. And then I have the I forgot what the set this came in, but it's another basic snowland. Here is the pixel full art one. Love these cards. They're awesome. Then here's the swamp. I think this was Keldheim, if I remember correctly. These came from Keldheim. And then here are my basics. So I'm running 4 forest and then 3 swamps. I'll show you. These are from the Infinity set. This is the full arts, and I think these look amazing. Infinity, not a beloved set. I mean, I don't like the set that much. However, you cannot deny the land art, the full arts that they did for this set. Honestly, the full art lands were amazing in this set. So super happy that I was able to pick them up for this deck. And that's it. We're done. And I think that was that faster? I don't know if that was faster than the last time. It felt worse for me because I feel sick. So not only was my voice hoarse, but all of a sudden I got a tummy ache. I am an official tummy ache survivor here. Oh, that's funny. But no, like, thank you for hanging out. Like, honestly, I really appreciate it. This was a lot harder for me than I thought it was going to be because I'm not feeling too great right now. But we pulled through it. Hopefully it was still like nice to listen to. I don't think well, now I'm complaining. I might have complained a little too much. Hopefully it wasn't too annoying to you guys. But yeah, there's the deck. I love this deck. It's a gift deck. It was a birthday present from my brother for me. I'm very grateful that he gave me the cards he did, because some of these cards are pretty expensive, so I'm glad that we were able to build this when we did. And everything about this deck, I think there's a lot about this deck that I love. Like, obviously I love the sleeves, I love the art, I love the strategy. However, a lot of times this deck can be a little bit annoying to play because there's a lot of moving parts and I'm not the smartest guy out there. Even though I put the deck together, sometimes it can be very unwieldy. Like I feel like I have to have like all my brain power sometimes when I'm playing this, because a lot of stuff is happening. You got a lot of triggers, you got a lot of things going on with this deck. So a lot of things you got to be paying attention to, a lot of landfall, a lot of graveyard triggers. I mean, you saw the deck, you know what it's doing. But I'm very happy. I'm glad I put it together. I don't think obviously it's not the strongest version of either of these commanders. Like, if this was either a Babo Saga deck or a Get Rog deck, I don't think it's the most optimal build you can do for it. However, it's the build I like. It's the build that works best for me. I'm not looking for any suggestions for upgrades. It does need a little bit of spring cleaning because there are some cards in here where they don't feel like they're the strongest, but a lot of times I don't want to cut certain cards because those cards were part of the gift. But I think overall I've done a good job upgrading what needed to be upgraded without destroying the core of the deck. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you think about the deck down in the comments or in chat. If you're here live, you can let me know what you think. I'm going to be spending the next 20 minutes shuffling all these cards together and hoping that I don't draw like 10 lands in one turn. Because man, that gets annoying. All of a sudden, like, if you don't shuffle this deck right, you'll be drawing lands for the next like 3 hours. And there's not even that many lands. It's like 40, there's 40 lands in this deck. 40 lands is like pretty conservative for a landfall deck. But I think I've done a good job balancing what this deck wants to do with the land base. And I'm quite happy with it. What else can we talk about? So I guess we can talk about what's next on the channel. We have one more commander deck to look at, and it's my favorite one. It's my very first commander deck. I hope I feel better whenever I decide to actually stream it. Hopefully I'll feel a lot better. It's my favorite deck. It's the deck that I keep updated the most, I believe. However, just because I keep it up to date doesn't mean it always gets updated with each set. Sometimes there are cards that I just don't want in the deck out of preference. Sometimes, I buy cards specifically because they're like secret layers. So a lot of times I'll have cards in that deck just because they came from a secret layer and I think they look cool. And yeah, I don't want to give away too much information about that deck because I want that deck to like kind of be its own thing on the channel. I want that video to kind of like be its own thing. I think I've given a few hints about it. It's the first deck I ever built was based on someone else's list that I saw. When I first got into Magic, I saw a video. It was, what was it? It was shucks. I'm trying to remember the name of the series. It's I can't remember because I watch them every week. It is I can't remember. But when I first started watching Commander games on YouTube, I saw this deck being piloted and I was like blown away by how oppressive and strong the deck looked and how like I don't know. I think that's just what got me the most interested, is that this deck was being piloted in a way that it felt so oppressive. Like you are the arch enemy regardless, and like your opponents couldn't do anything about it. So that's why I love the deck so much. It's a very strong deck that has only become stronger as time came on, as time has progressed. And it was the first deck I learned how to play Magic with, which I don't recommend. I don't recommend piloting a complicated deck as your first deck, because it really was a super strong deck. It really felt like I was playing, like, I think the best analogy I've heard from it is that, you know, it feels like we're teaching you how to shoot a gun with a bazooka. And that, I love that analogy. That's an analogy I've kept in mind ever since that was said to me. It's like you're learning how to shoot a gun using a bazooka. That's what your first deck is like. So I'm very excited to show that deck off. It's really just, you know, that deck is a labor of love. Not really labor, because I'm not putting any actual work into it. And also, I think it has the most playtime, but it's very difficult to play it because a lot of times I only get to play it with other strong decks. Thankfully, my meta is already been pushed. My meta has already been pushed to the max. Like we're maxed out on the I think we're maxed out on the difficulty scale. Like we're playing like 9s essentially. Like we're playing conservative 9s. We're like playing power 9 decks. And so that deck sees a lot more play because all the decks I'm fighting are just like really tough. And it wins probably the most. And I'm excited. I mean, I'm talking about it because I want to show it off, but I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna chill out. That's gonna be the next week's video. Next week's stream is gonna be my very first commander deck that is still put together and that I care a lot about, that I like a lot. So I hope I can do justice to the deck. Hopefully I did justice to this deck, to the Get Rock monster. This really is just a deck I love a lot because it has a lot of sentimental value. However, it's a deck that's very difficult to pilot. It's a very jank deck that has a lot of moving little parts. And if anything gets disturbed, it explodes. It just poofs out of existence. So it's a fun deck to pilot. I like the Get Rock monster. And I like Babalo Saga. So I think it's the perfect combination. I think it's the perfect blend of both strategies. However, it's still pretty jank. Man. So next stream, what are we gonna play next stream? I don't know. I think I'm gonna try to do content warding again, because I'm gonna reach out to Bun and see if she wants to play content warding sometime next week. We'll see. If not, I will probably just do another solo game. Very likely it's gonna be, I don't know, Thronefall, most likely. Anyways, I've eaten enough of your time. Thank you for joining me. This was fun. I had a good time, despite feeling not so great. I had a good stream. I hope you had a good time watching the cards. And let me know if you like the deck. I'm not making any upgrades to it. I'm not making changes to it. So, you know, the deck is what it is. It's gonna stay the same. And yeah, you know, I'm gonna go ahead and love you and leave you here. And until next time, goodbye. 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 Whoa.